Hello and welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz. Zero, of course, is out. He is running his own esports team for some reason. I couldn't come up with a better joke with a sports team. But anyway, that's it. Zero's not here right now, as you already well know. And yeah, that's all there is to that. So the next couple of weeks, I decided that we should do sports movies until we do the obvious movies of October, which is, of course, scary movies. I chose sports movies because big things are happening in the sports world right now. The baseball playoffs is going on right now. The football season just started, and basketball will be coming up soon. So I thought now is as good a time as any to watch some sports films. So my relationship with sports films is pretty much this. I think they're okay, but unless you have an attachment to the sport, well, with a few exceptions, of course, these types of films tend to be bog standard wherever you go. Unless it's about the business of the sport or it's something that is adjacent to the sport. Like, let's say Moneyball is technically about baseball, but it's really about the business of running a team. Or I would say He Got Game is technically a sports movie, but it's really about a father-son relationship. When it's about, namely, the sport, I find that I have a hard time really connecting with the movies at times. I think they're okay for the most part, but if they don't have more than just the inspirational story of an underdog team going against all odds to beat the big bad team, like I kind of get bored with it unless there's more to it than that. And yeah, that's pretty much sports movies on there. Like if they rely too much on, let's say, like the team dynamics of sports, they tend to be kind of boilerplate with most movies. So with that, I thought I would watch probably one of the most celebrated and beloved sports movies of all time. And that is the 1986 movie Hoosiers, starring Gene Hackman, Barbara Hershey, and Dennis Hopper, directed by David Anspough. I have never heard of David Anspough, to be absolutely honest. So, and apparently this was his first film, along with the writer Angela Pizzo. So yeah, I was that was interesting to find out. So I watched the movie just about a couple of hours ago before recording, and like I mentioned on the top, when it comes to sports movies, it's kind of a bog standard sports movie. When you look at the way the story runs and the dialogue and how the plot rolls, it's standard. It is underdog team gets with an underdog coach who's down on his luck, and they find out the meaning of competing and the importance of being a team and all that jazz and stuff. Which, to a lot of people, to be fair, to a lot of people who love sports, those are the things that they connect with the most. Seeing underdogs beat the big guys. They get that emotional investment whenever they see that happen. Which, I understand. I used to be, like when I was a kid, and up until high school, I played sports. And so I understand the dynamics to a certain extent of team sports and why people have such an attachment to sports in itself. Like it's really the only time where a lot of people get to feel special if they're good at something, if they practice and they improve. And it's really, when you do that, is the easiest way to get recognition and congratulations, because a lot of people do understand sports and they connect in that way with others. And when a large group of people can recognize when you are good at something, it feels good to be recognized with that. So yeah, I completely understand why some people do get attached to sports and sports movies. So, but that's also kind of the problem with sports movies. It relies on a lot of sports movies rely on the fact that you have an attachment to sports in some tangible way. Either you love watching sports and you love rooting for your team, or you've played sports and you understand the team dynamics, or anything along those lines. They almost require you to understand what it's like to play sports and to be a part of a team, or to be good at something and get that recognition and want that recognition. Which leads to a lot of sports films having not the deepest of characters, not the best of plots, and they end up being kind of, like I said in the beginning, bog standard. They do enough to make the film entertaining and enjoyable, and that is it. And I think that's exactly what Hoosiers is. Hoosiers is as bog standard as they come. It is basically, the plot is basically a coach with a checkered past, played by Gene Hackman, and a local drunk, played by Dennis Hopper, train a small-town high school team to become a top contender for the state championship. And that's, with most sports movies and sports shows and sports fiction, that's kind of par for the course. I don't know if that started, I doubt it started with Hoosiers, but it wears that formula pretty well on this movie. So if you haven't seen it, and I know there's probably a lot of people who have, if you haven't seen this film and you've been hearing all the praise this movie gets, bear in mind that these, like, sports films don't necessarily have the deepest of plots or the most dynamic of, let's say, characterization, or any kind of camera or any kind of filmmaking tricks and deep motivations that you would normally get in other movies. It is almost a requirement that you know what you're getting into with this. There are some interesting dynamics in the movie, I guess, but are done better in other films that maybe are not sports films, but I would say other films like The Last Picture Show probably did a much better job conveying when it comes to, like, small town dynamics and the importance of a sport to that town. The setting is, of course, is a small rural town in Indiana in 1952. I think it was 52. And these people are obsessed with basketball. And the coach came from New York after coaching at college and doing something pretty wrong, and was offered the job from his friend, who is also a principal in the school. And that's how the plot goes. And there's the dynamic of the coach in the town, which lasts. I'll get to that in spoilers, but you do have some dramatic intangibility outside of the sport itself, of the sport being played, but it's not given that much depth. It's not really. It is inferred that you know what these people are thinking and what they feel, which, in my mind, is kind of lazy. But I understand that some people do understand those dynamics very well, and it might not be a problem with them. If you have a hard time grasping that, you might be a bit confused. Maybe not confused, but you might be like, what's the big deal? Like, I don't... Why are they this hung up on this sport? The movie doesn't really get into that too much. The other thing that I've noticed is plot contrivances throughout the entire the movie. Like, things just happen, and happen in favor of the main character, which is Normandale, who is the coach played by Gene Hackman. He never really, in my mind, earns the trust that he gets in the movie. It just kind of happens. And I'll get to spoilers as to why I think that. It makes the story of the coach winning over the people in the town not seem very genuine and not seem very believable, or the dramatic intentions they had for the film just don't work, because it's not exactly what they thought that it was going to be at that point. So I had some issues with that. What I will say, though, and this is kind of a slap to the face of the movie, is that the actors that they got for this film, it punches above the weight of the actual story and plot and dialogue. I mean, they have three great actors, in Gene Hackman, Barbara Hershey, and Dennis Hopper, who play not very interesting characters, but put up really good performances. Especially Dennis Hopper as Shooter, who is basically the local drunk who becomes an assistant coach at some point in the movie. It's a pretty good performance, and it's kind of par for the course for Dennis Hopper, who does very good performances in movies. The thing is, like, again, these actors are punching above their weight when it comes to the screenplay, because the screenplay is just not that interesting. But they, essentially, in my opinion, they acted their asses off to make these stories seem good. And that's cool and everything, and it helps me enjoy the movie a little bit better, because I'm seeing very good performances being played out. But I just kept asking myself when watching this film, how did they get these guys? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't imagine reading the script and going, yeah, I must do this. I don't get how they got such great actors and with a screenplay and writing that isn't very good. In fact, well, I'm not going to say it's bad. It is average. It is average for a sports movie. It is, I think it's as boilerplate and as rudimentary as it comes as a sports movie, essentially. So, yeah, that's my feeling with the performances on the movie. Great performances. And there's some very good character actors, too, that play small roles in the movie as well. But I sat here watching the movie going, these are good performances, but I don't understand how they got these great actors to play these roles that aren't terribly deep and not that interesting. So basically, the actors punched above the weight of the screenplay, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that I just was kind of surprised that they got such good performances. Oh, well, no, not from the actors, because these are very good actors. But I'm surprised that they were able to muster up a great performance in an otherwise average screenplay in this. Okay, so I got down to what I thought of the film. Before spoilers, let's get into spoilers. If you haven't watched Hoosiers, or you're interested in watching the movie, you can stop now and come back and watch it on your own leisure. The spoilers start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I mentioned that I don't feel the coach really earned the adulation and the respect of the people in the town as the movie went along. And I'm going to explain why right now. The coach Norman Dale, played by Gene Hackman, is fairly arrogant when he comes in, although he's supposed to be kind of humbled because he's getting a last chance at doing what he loves to do. But it became but they show throughout the entire movie that he's a fish out of water, and he's in a place where essentially things are done a lot differently than what he's used to. And there are constant battles in the first half of the movie between him and the townsfolk who want him to coach a certain way and want to do things a certain way, but he refuses to do. Which, okay, that adds some drama, sure. But the point of having the drama is that when it pays, it's supposed to pay off in the end. But what happens for him to win over, quote unquote, win over the crowd is basically throughout the first half of the film, there is a character named Johnny who is supposed to be probably the best player that town has ever seen. and he doesn't want to play for personal reasons. There's some things going on in his life. Added drama, so that's an interesting dynamic. What happens in the middle of the movie that convinces the townsfolk to stick with Norman is that the player gets, during a meeting where they're deciding to fire the coach, the player comes out of nowhere, talks to the crowd and says, I'm going to come back and play basketball. But if the coach leaves, I'm not coming back. This character had maybe one interaction with the coach, a minor interaction that gave no hint that it had some kind of significance to the character itself, and basically made it seem more of a plot device more than an actual characterization and understanding of how the player felt about the coach, because there was no relationship at all with the coach and the player. So for that player to stick his neck out and say, unless this coach is here, I'm not coming back, it was really weird. It just didn't seem to feel right in the movie. So when that happened, I'm like, but why? There's no reason for you to be attached to this character, and the way that this town treats this specific character, he could have had anything he wanted, and he stuck with him for reasons. I don't get that. I watched that as seeing go on. I'm like, but why? Why would you stick your neck out? That's weird. And it's a plot contrivance. It is the plot. We have an idea of what the plot is going to be, and instead of finding a creative way to make that plot seem natural, we're just sticking to the plot, and that's how it's going to be. And that's kind of that's lazy writing to a certain extent, to have a character that had no attachment to the main character suddenly save this person for no reason whatsoever was very strange in this. And that was one problem I had with, I guess, the coach, quote unquote, winning over the town, because he technically didn't win them over. The kid just hung him out to dry and said, like, if you want me, he has to stay. Oh, why? No reason. What? Like, I don't get that. Like, I just don't get that. And then there is the character that Barbara Hershey played, who is a teacher by the name of Myra Fleener. She is a teacher in the school who essentially in the first scene kind of treated Norman like shit. Like absolute shit. Just like, yeah, you're nothing special. I'm like, okay. So and back to the town meeting, she came to defense for the guy, even for the coach, even though throughout the first half of the film she didn't like him. Like, she didn't like him at all. And she kept telling him, you need to stay away from Jimmy because he's special and he can do other things aside from basketball. And for her to all of a sudden stick her neck out for this character, again, just like Jimmy, who didn't have that kind of attachment or didn't have that kind of relationship with the character, was again another contrivance. It was just a means to get the plot along. And I watched that and I just kept saying, why? Why do it that way? Why do you have to have this character do this in this way? It felt off to me. And yeah, that with that specifically with the coach winning over the town, I just did not buy at all. And I just sat there going, that could have been done a lot better. And then let's get back to the teacher. Again, Barbara Hershey puts in a good performance in this movie. But for some reason, she gets romantically entangled with the coach. There is an attachment somewhat in regards to Jimmy, but it was an antagonistic attachment. For them all of a sudden to be romantically interested in each other out of nowhere in the film just seemed really odd. And I just sat there going, why do you need this? There's no reason to have this plotline in there. Now, apparently this is based on a true story. And that may have happened in the actual story of Hoosiers and what these characters are based on. But the movie did a very poor job of showing exactly why these characters are romantically interested in each other, especially Barbara Hershey's character. I watched it. I was like, why are you interested in him? What is your... Okay, sure. Whatever. I'll go along, I guess. And, but what I will say, though, is the shooter, the drunk who becomes the assistant coach, played by Dennis Hopper. I mean, it's a standard drunk who embarrasses himself and embarrasses his kid. And it's a semi-redemption story of him trying to get clean, but failing, and then trying to get clean again. And it's fine. It's okay. I enjoyed it more for Hopper's performance than the actual story going through its paces, which, again, is sad. It really shows how good of a performer Dennis Hopper was, to take a character that really isn't that interesting and not that creative and not that dynamic, and make him into a character that you want to watch and you want, I guess, that can entertain you, that can actually be of interest to follow to a certain extent. The performances in this film from Gene Hackman, from Dennis Hopper and Barbara Hershey, I think saved the film from being a less than average or just slightly average movie to like a somewhat average movie, or like a somewhat higher than average. I don't know if people just excuse sports films for being this contrived and not being this creative and not being this interesting and having these okay screenplays, which is, I'll push back. There are great movies, the great sports movies that have great writing. Bull Durham is one of them. Tin Cup, White Man Can't Jump, Ron Shelton movies, essentially. Like, they are very good sports movies that deserve some credit for having very good writing and very good characters, especially Bull Durham. Bull Durham's a fantastic movie. But yeah, I just sat here watching the movie and going, if you didn't have these three actors, this movie wouldn't work. It just would not work at all. Which I guess blows my mind that they got these actors in the first place. This is the only movie that Dennis Hopper got an Academy Award nomination for. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. He definitely deserves the recognition for this movie, because he took, like I said, he took an average screenplay and I would think is a somewhat forgettable movie and spun it into a great performance. And that deserves recognition to a certain extent. But for him to get nominated for this and not Blue Velvet is weird. And you know who agrees with me? Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper has gone on to say when he got nominated for this film, it's like he's grateful. He was grateful for the nomination, but he thought his performance in Blue Velvet was much better and should have gotten nominated for that. And hey, I got to agree with the guy. That was a fantastic performance. And as good as this is, I mean, I'm glad he got recognized, but it's okay. It's a good performance. It's a very good performance, but it's just not in a great movie. It really isn't. So let's get into final thoughts of the film. This is probably going to upset a few people who think Hoosiers is probably one of the best sports movies of all time. And I'm going to tell you, if this is one of the best sports movies of all time, then we need somebody that is as good as Ron Shelton to make really good sports movies again. Because if this is still considered the best, man, has there not been any improvement. I know that there are other sports movies that have been out recently, like Warrior, that has gotten a lot of praise that people seem to really like. And I might check that out another time. The film is average at best when it comes to writing, plot, and characters. It is only made slightly better by the performance of Gene Hackman, Barbara Hershey, and Dennis Hopper. The direction is standard. It's not that great, and it's from a first-time director at the time, so I kind of get that. So I can kind of excuse that. But for this to be considered one of the best sports movies of all time, I think just goes to show, in my mind, that sports movies need a desperate renaissance in order to get better quality films out there, because there should be something a lot better than this. And I think there are better films than this. Like I mentioned, Bull Durham, White Man Can't Jump, Tin Cup. I would also say He Got Game is a great sports movie, although that's more of a father-son movie than a sports movie. But it has a great performance by an athlete, so okay, we can kind of count that. But in the end, Hoosiers is a decent movie. I will more than likely forget about this movie as soon as I'm done with this review and as soon as I post it and everything. And I guess that's kind of sad. I kind of do get the praise to a certain extent because it has great performances. But for those who are saying, oh, this is like the greatest movie, one sports movies of all time, I just have to ask, like, do you guys not want good sports movies? Because if this is considered a great sports movie, I don't know what you're looking for here, because it's all right, but it's not great. So out of 5 stars, I'd give it a 3, like barely a 3. Like, if it weren't for the great performances, it would be a 2. So I'd give it a 3 out of 5 stars. And I think that's kind of generous in this one. So 3 out of 5 stars for Hoosiers. And if you're in the sports movies, you probably have already seen it. But if you haven't, I'd give it a shot. And I would say the performances are worth it. But in the end, I don't think it's something that should be as celebrated as it has been for all this time. I think it's just okay. It's good. It's a good movie. Not great. Okay, so we are done with the review, but I want to first talk about a trailer that popped up this past week. And no, it's not the Super Mario Brothers movie, which just had a teaser. I don't really like doing teasers because they barely show anything. That's the point of a teaser. But I want to talk about the new Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, that just released a trailer. And I just want to talk about it since I've seen pretty much all the MCU movies, and I just basically want to discuss the film itself. I'm going to keep watching MCU movies until I just realize either I'm done, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting bored with this, I'm done, or it just gets so bad that it's just worth stopping at this point. For background, I thought Black Panther was very good. I do not think it deserved an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. I was kind of stunned by that. But it was a good Marvel movie, and it was probably one of the better ones. I had a key problem with the movie. It should have been broken up into 3 movies, I think. If you would have had Black Panther separated into 3, where 1 is the introduction of Wakanda and the politics within, 2 is him going against Claw, and 3 is going against Killmonger. And Killmonger is, in all 3, acting as a kind of sinister Thanos-like villain that is just surrounding the whole thing. That would have been perfect. But I don't think the movie's bad. I think it's very good. So as much as I think they could have done better with the movie in that and in that way, I think the movie's good and it's worth watching. Watching the trailer for Wakanda Forever, I got questions. And the questions I have are, how much are they going to essentially talk about the fact that T'Challa is not there anymore. He's dead in the movie now. He's dead in the series. And how much are they going to hang up on that? Is T'Challa as important in the movie as any of the other characters? Because if they really dwell on T'Challa throughout the movie, that could end up not being very good. But if they also just do a quick scene and they throw it away, it's like, oh, time to move on, that would be bad too. So there has to be a balance in that as well. The movie looks good. As good as it does look, the first Black Panther had a distinct feel to it that gave it its energy and gave it its personality. I'm not saying it doesn't have this, but I don't see that in the trailer. I just don't see it at this point. It may be there when the time comes, but I watched it and was like, this is kind of missing that personality that the first Black Panther had. And that kind of, but that might be different when the movie plays. But I remember when the first trailer for Black Panther came out years ago, like you saw instantly the personality and the energy it was going for, and that's what got people excited. I don't see that in this trailer. Maybe what they're doing is they're going to flesh out Wakanda as a character to make it, I guess, more interesting in that aspect. Maybe not make a main character out of one of the other characters, but make the location a character as the main character, and then go from there, which would be an interesting take on that land. Because Wakanda in itself has a very as a social significance now, so that might not be such a bad idea on that end to just say, hey, we're making the movie about Wakanda. The main character is Wakanda, and this is how we're going to do it. And that might be interesting, but it doesn't really portray itself in the trailer. I question having a new Black Panther right away. I don't care about the culture war stuff. Like, people are the people who complain that, oh, they just keep hiring women to do these these characters and replacing these. Like, okay, whatever. I don't care. I don't care. Because if that's the best they can get, that's the best they can get. And if Shuri is Black Panther, fine. We'll see how that goes. Would I have went that route for the second movie? No. I would have probably, if I was going to make Shuri Black Panther, I would make the movie to a certain extent, not only about Wakanda, about Shuri stepping up and proving herself to have the mantle of Black Panther. And that ends the movie when she earns it. And then the third movie goes on to where she is Black Panther. Have her earn that throughout an entire movie and get that emotional investment involved to where the audience can feel that connection when that happens. That might be what they do, but the fact that they showed Black Panther in the trailer has me thinking that it's probably going to be somewhere akin to a Marvel origin movie, which, if that's the case, is going to be... I don't like that at all. They also showed Ironheart in the movie, and I'm curious as to what they do with Ironheart. I don't care about culture war stuff, but if they try and make her into a replacement Tony Stark, which I hope they don't. I hope they make her into her own character. But if they try that, you're going to have a lot of people crying foul on that. And they're, oh, you're trying to replace Tony Stark. And like, okay, whatever. That would also be a detriment to the character itself, I would think. I don't know the character from the comics. I'm going to be dead honest. So I don't know if that's how she is portrayed as a replacement for Tony Stark. But if that ends up being the case, yeah, we're going to hear a lot of bullshit on that. And yeah, I'm not really looking forward to it. As for Nomar as the villain, I don't know. I got to see more. I got to see more of what they do with Nomar. And that's really it, really. As a trailer for the movie, yeah, I'm interested, but in all honesty, I was going to see the movie anyway. To be fair, because I'm still knee-deep into the MCU. So, yeah, I'm going to continue watching. And like I said, I'm going to continue watching until I just suddenly realize, oh, the quality is not coming back. And then I'll dip. But, yeah, that's it at that point. I think it's fine. It looks good. I will watch it. I'm curious as to the direction they're going. I really hope they go in a different direction than making another Marvel origin movie of making Shuri the Black Panther. But we'll see. We will see how that goes. All right, we are nearing the end of the episode. But if Zero were here, I would have a question for him. So I'm just going to have to rename this something else. So here is the question of the episode this week. This past week in the box office, a movie came out that was getting a good critical response and what seemed like very good Twitter buzz. And that was Bros, starring Billy Eichner. It was a gay rom-com about two gay men falling in love. And it was a comedy of sorts. And I guess it was kind of a vulgar comedy, too, in a certain extent. Even though it was getting great word of mouth and people on Twitter saying they were excited to see the movie, it tanked. It actually did not well at all. Out of a $22 million budget, it only made $5 million in its opening weekend. It made $4 million in its opening weekend. It's currently at $5 million right now. It's looking like more theaters are going to drop the movie because it's not making much more sales. And yeah, it's honestly considered a box office bomb at this point. It was released at 3,500 theaters, and for it to make just that much money, yeah, that's not good at all. That is a dud right there. And what I will say about Bros is this: right now, I'll just get into why it possibly bombed. The thing about Bros is, if the word of mouth from critics is correct, is that this was going to be a movie that I would have to gain its audience. It would have to gain it by word of mouth. Bros reminded me of The Full Monty in 1997. This is I think a Irish movie about a bunch of lower class guys who are down on their luck, and in order to make money, start a male review show or a Chippendale show. It started Robert Carlyle, Mark Addy of Game of Thrones. He played Robert Baratheon in the first season, and Tom Wilkinson was in it as well. And it was when it was released originally, it did not do well. It only released in a few theaters, but it didn't make much money. But word of mouth started growing about how good this movie was, and because of that, it stayed in the theaters and got into more theaters and made more and more money as time went on. And it became so successful that it eventually surprised everyone at that year's Oscars and got a Best Picture nomination for The Full Monty. It got Best Picture, Best Writer, Best Director, and I think it got Best Music too. I'm not sure about that last one. But it got the three awards that constitute what makes a great movie, which is writing and directing. It got nominations for those things. And something told me before this that this is exactly what was going to happen with Bros. That if the word of mouth was good enough, and it stayed in theaters and just eventually made more and more money, that it would eventually be the full Monty of this year, to where I even said on Twitter that this movie could get an Oscar nomination for Best Picture this year, just by the word of mouth alone. And if they would have marketed this in a grassroots sort of way, I think it would have made a lot of money. I think it would have worked. But they instead decided to have a standard Hollywood release that would be more for higher budget movies. Now, this movie was made for about $25 million, but it had a marketing budget of $45 million. So that means in order for it to make its money back, it needs to make over $70 million. And then with the studio, it's probably asking for more money in return. So we're looking at upwards to about $85 to $90 million that it has to make just for the studio to be happy. And it tanked. It did not do well at all. My issue immediately was, you guys didn't market this well. Like, this isn't a movie, and I hate to say this, because I do think, as somebody, and again, I'll preface this, I'm a straight man. I've always been straight. But queer cinema has always been very interesting to me. Some of the best movies, some of the best dramas have been queer cinema. And some of the best comedies, too. You can, of course, point to Brokeback Mountain, but I will also say Love, Valor, Compassion. I would also say Bent, if anyone has seen... I don't think anyone's heard of Bent, but Bent was a great movie. There have been a number of queer cinema movies from like the 90s and the 2000s that are excellent, that people should give a chance and watch, because there is the added drama of that time where homosexuality was still kind of frowned upon, unfortunately. But that added drama and that added characterization gave more humanity in some drama and comedy than most straight comedies, which just shows the quality of the writing and the dynamic that queer cinema has that should be celebrated, and should be, I think, if more straight people would give it a shot, I think they would find some really good movies. But yes, I understand that some, and this is unfortunately true, if with some straight, with people who are straight to a certain extent, just like with any movies, if they can't connect with the character, they have a hard time. If they can't automatically relate, they have a hard time connecting, which is sad, because there are characters that I don't relate to that I can connect with. But it takes a while. It takes something to give them a chance to do that, and I think the word of mouth could have done that with Bros in this. It is sad that it failed. And when I posted this on Twitter, that's what I posted on Twitter, basically saying Bros will kill on streaming. I think if it was on streaming, it would be a top 5 for the year for any streaming service it would have, if it is as quality as critics are saying it is. Okay? But unfortunately, it's a niche audience, and unless it's really high quality and people can identify with the characters, it wasn't going to make money. And that, it's sad, but it's true. That's just how it works, unfortunately. And I thought that was the issue. And then someone replied to me and went, no, that's not the only issue here. And he showed me an article of Billy Eichner pretty much saying, if you're gay and conservative, I don't want you to watch my movie because you're a traitor. And I don't get why people in business do this. That if you don't agree with me, if you don't agree with 100% of my ideology and my thought process and everything, I don't want your business. I don't want your support. I don't want you to enjoy my stuff. I thought the entire point of art and the entire point of movies and entertainment is for people to connect with other people that they may have a hard time connecting with, to then just go out and say, yeah, if you don't think like me, don't fucking bother. You were asking to fail at that point. And if that, and of course, the person who told me this is gay and conservative. And when he told me that, he's like, and since that's fine, I'm not supporting you. And honestly, I don't blame him. Like, if you turned around and said to me, if you're not exactly like me, don't fucking bother supporting me, I was like, fine, I won't. Via con Dios, I'm out. So I completely understand that mentality. And then for Billy Eichner, after Bros bombed, to then blame homophobia and straight people for his box office bomb? Dude, I understand you are upset. You're dismayed by the fact that your film bombed. But I'm telling you, if you did this with a smile on your face and said, hey, I'm proud of the work that we did. It is important for LGBTQ representation to be on film, and for this film to have this much of a budget, this much of a box, and this how much of screens to be on there is important. Yes, I'm sad that it failed, but I love it anyway, and I really hope you guys give it a shot. I think more people would have given it a shot after the word of mouth was positive. But now that you're blaming straight people for not watching it and saying that it's homophobia is the reason why people didn't watch the movie, no, that's not what happened here. Bigger budget movies that people like. Let's really dive into this, okay? The only movies that make money in theaters right now are big budget movies that people perceive that the only way to really enjoy the movie is to watch it in the theater. We're talking Marvel. We're talking Top Gun, Mission Impossible. Those movies. Those movies make bank. Rom-coms don't do that anymore. They don't. And an example I would give, okay, is Happiest Season. Happiest Season is a movie that got decent reviews when it came out. And it's about, it's a Christmas movie, and two, it's an LGBTQ movie about two lesbians who go to, I guess, one of their parents' house for Christmas. And even they had probably one of the most respected and best actresses out there in Kristen Stewart in this movie that I saw it and I didn't really like it. But I understand the importance of having an LGBTQ movie that I guess is that, I would say, comfortable. That is that, yeah, I would say comfortable, to be charitable here. But I understood the importance of that movie. And even though I did not like it, and I thought it was not that good, I understand why it needed to be made and why it was important for it to be made. But even they had a well-known, well-respected, beloved actress in Kristen Stewart. And what did they say? Yo, this isn't going to make much money, so we should put this on streaming. Hey! Why didn't you guys think of that for a second? Why didn't you guys say, like, hold on a second. If one of the most respected actresses had an LGBTQ movie, a rom-com, and even they said it wasn't going to make the money we'd need, we need to sell this on streaming. What made you think, with a bunch of actors that no one has heard of, talented actors, don't get me wrong, but a bunch of actors that people haven't heard of, okay? What made you think that was going to sell? What? What did you think was going to do that? Because I could have told you from day one, that ain't going to work. You're not going to make $80 million. That's not going to work. Put it on streaming. Don't bother with marketing. Do a grassroots campaign. Do a social media campaign. Do that. Don't do that. Don't spend twice the amount of your budget on marketing, it's not going to work. I could have told you that. I mean, straight rom-coms don't make much money. Gay ones aren't going to either, unfortunately. Unless they are unparalleled, fantastic, and they are made in such a the lowest common denominator that anybody can enjoy it. Like, I'm talking about like Birdcage. Okay? If they made the Birdcage again, maybe that would have made money. But at that point, you doomed yourself to fail. And that's not straight people's fault. It's not homophobia. It's bad fucking marketing. It's bad business. You guys should have recognized at this point, around the time that it was about to be released, that we're releasing it in October, which is where more scary movies are coming out, or in the fall, or movies that are Oscar bait movies. So, haughty-taughty dramas. So, we're going to be the odd duckling out here. And people aren't looking for those movies per se. We're also an LGBTQ film, which has a limited audience, unfortunately. We probably should put it on streaming. I think, honestly, Netflix would have bought it, and you would have been fine. You would have made your money. Now, if you go to streaming, they're going to lowball you. They're going to say, well, your film bombed, so you need to prove that we're going to get the clicks and we're going to get the retention that we need, so we're not going to pay top dollar for it. So you're screwed now. If this movie is as good as the critics say it is, I want it to succeed. I want more queer films. Like I said in the beginning, some of the best movies out there are queer films, or LGBTQ films, sorry. Like, the best romance in the past 10 years, I think, is Call Me By Your Name. Such a deep, meaningful, beautiful movie that I adore. And I'm straight, and I like it. Okay? But I also recognize that unless it is such a good quality, it's not going to make money. And you guys failed at business, and then with Billy Eichner blaming everybody, but honestly, maybe his producers, his marketing team, his team, maybe himself. I mean, without that, like, you now just shot yourself in the foot. Now no one's going to see your movie until it's in streaming. And maybe in a few years' time, this will become a cult hit. And people are like, wow, it's so unfortunate that this movie bombed in the theaters. So good. Well, unfortunately, your marketing and your business people, and possibly Billy Eichner, is probably why that is at this point. I will, and I'll be upfront, I will watch it when it comes into streaming. I don't watch movies in theaters anymore for personal reasons. And but yeah, like, I'll watch it when it comes out. But for anyone now, for people who are like, I could give that a chance, for now, if you to blame straight people and homophobia, they're going to go, fuck you. I'm not going to watch this. Fuck you. And you know what? You earned it. Sorry to be harsh on you, but that is the case, unfortunately. All right. Well, that is the end of this episode. But before we go, I'm going to talk about the next movie that I'm going to be watching. I thought I was going to do a baseball movie since the playoffs are happening right now. But you know what? Since I mentioned it during the review for Hoosiers, and that this is also a celebrated film that apparently a lot of people like, I am going to go ahead and say we're going to watch the movie Warrior, starring Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte, from 2001. This has outstanding ratings on IMDb, but then again, how many times have I gone on this show and mentioned that something has to have outstanding ratings in IMDb, and it doesn't turn out to be that great? So we'll see on that. But yeah, we're going to watch Warrior. And yeah, this will be interesting. This is a film directed by Gavin O'Connor. And again, it stars Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte, and Joel Edgerton. That will be it for the Capital Games Movie Club. Tune in next week where I watch the movie Warrior, starring Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. I am the Wiz. Talk to you next time. Bye.